A little bit on how I got involved in this project and how I met for Esther initially. My wife, who is an Anusah, whose family originate from Spain, from Seville, was going through the conversion process, which is a very long and hard process for anyone who knows what that's about. And one day we get a call from Esther in Spanish, and she asked to speak to my wife, and I got speaking to her. By the way, we live in Spain, and that's how I first met Esther on the phone. Later, I think it was a few months afterwards, we actually met in New York when my wife went for the conversion process. It got on very, very well, very interesting woman. Literally, she is the last Anusah, and has taken this project to the heights that it needs to go to. When I first heard this story about Puerto Rico and Dvora's adventure there, I guess I was kind of surprised, but not surprised. I mean, I've been in Spain and been very, very close to the subject. I've known about the Anusim and all over Europe and Spain and Portugal, especially the Belmonte community. Also, it's a subject that's very close to my heart. My father was very passionate about this subject. He was an expert on the subject, anything to do with Spain and Sepharad. He knew everything there was to know about Jewish Spain, and every little nook and cranny and every little piece of history throughout the country. And when Dvora started her adventure, I was, okay, so we found some, finally. Got some back. Now, as far as my involvement with Puerto Rico at this stage, much of a spectator as I was until Dvora actually came to Spain. This is recently. She came over to Spain to be with us and to I guess put the last leg of the adventure together. When the first place we went when Dvora arrived was to spend Shabbat in Gibraltar, and they received us really, really well. It's a wonderful place to spend the holiday, spend the Shabbat. And so we stayed with some friends of mine, who the rabbi, the Rosh Kollel over there. And Dvora had an opportunity to tell her story, and everyone was fascinating. And what they did was they arranged for her to speak to the women at Seudah Shlishit and tell them her tale. And it kind of worked out really well, because the first official telling of the story should be in the only real Spanish community left in the world that is authentic, that is still in Spain, as it were. The average turnout is very small normally for a lady speaker, but Dvora managed to pack the house out. There were a lot of people, a lot of women. I actually watched it from the ladies section. We went upstairs. So imagine Dvora gave her speech in the men's section downstairs, filled the main shul, which is absolutely beautiful. And I was upstairs. I sat upstairs to listen to the shiur, and quite a lot of men came. And the chief rabbi of Gibraltar, he came to listen as well, and he sat there mesmerized, and we listened to the shiur intently. Really, really well received. And it's kind of nice and fitting that the first place that this should start, or the first place that this tale should be told officially, should be in Gibraltar. This is just before we went to Cordoba on the Sunday, and beautiful experience, really, really nice. I think Dvora enjoyed it as well. Just a little bit of a background on Gibraltar and the community. The community of Gibraltar, very, very predominant, very, 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 very religious, very, very wealthy, very well established, the most religious Jewish communities in the world. How did they get to come to Gibraltar? Well, they fled the Inquisition around 1492, and this group of Jews, these families, bought island of Gibraltar, which is just off the Spanish coast, from the crown, and they settled there, and they lived there for a while, for a few hundred years, until the Inquisition came and chased them away. And they ran away and they settled in northern Morocco, just a few miles away, until the British took over Gibraltar in the Treaty of Utrecht in 1704, at which point they invited these families to come back and reclaim their seats, which is what they did, and they came back and resettled in Gibraltar. So you can see that this community is unique in so much that they can trace their lineage all the way back to Spain, and the Nusach and Minhag hasn't changed. It's the same as it was then, still the same as it is today, 500 years later, or 527 years later. And we went to Cordoba, which was big awakening for me. See, I've always had this love affair with Spain. I've always felt like it's home. However, this trip to Cordoba made me realize just how much it isn't home, and it's time to move on. We found one spot in the old town, in the Juderia, where we could see some of the names on the walls of the victims of the Inquisition. We found a lot of Floresta's relatives, or the names of her relatives, painted there on the wall. And one thing that struck me the most was when we were talking to some of the guides there, or people at the museum. They were very proud of their Sephardi heritage, until I asked them where the cemetery was, if there still was a Jewish cemetery. And it kind of put them in an uncomfortable position, but it was purposefully done on my part to show them that there's nothing to be proud of. They destroyed every Jew and every semblance of Judaism there was in Spain. So I made the woman say that they destroyed the cemetery. So don't be so proud about your Sephardi heritage. So this is a long trip that Torah has to make. And the second leg was to go to Seville. I didn't join them on that trip, but my wife and Dvorah went to Seville, and I guess that kind of put closure on the Spanish chapter, whereas there was some remnants in Cordoba. In Sevilla there was absolutely nothing. It had all been paved over. I guess my concern was at some stage that, okay, if we're going to bring these people back and show them the way back to Sepharad, to Judaism, to back to Hashem, how are we going to do it? And the one concern that I have is a similar concern to what happened to the community of Belmonte. They need to be brought back to their own, by their own, to a Sephardi Spanish community with Spanish Minhag and Spanish Nusach, which is different from Ashkenaz, different from Chabad, different from Hasidut, different from other Sephardi Minhagim as well. I mean, Spanish and Portuguese shuls are very, very unique. So much so that here in Gibraltar, where I suppose we can say it's the last authentic Spanish community that can trace their history back to the Inquisition and before, they have a unique way of doing things. And this is the way that these people would have prayed before they went to Puerto Rico, or when they went to Puerto Rico or anywhere else in the Caribbean. If they prayed in secret, they'd have prayed to this Nusach. Just a little example, on Shabbat Chol HaMoed of Pesach, we read the Haftarah of Gog and Magog, and in Gibraltar community they read it in Spanish, in Ladino. Also, some of this praying is done in Ladino. Bear in mind, this is written in the Siddur in Hebrew script and pronounced in Spanish. It's quite unique. And this is something that shouldn't be forgotten. This is part of the history and part of what these people, if they come back and manage to come back, should come back to. Not to come back to something alien that is not really of their heritage. So I guess that's all from me for now. Now, this fellow you see here, Muslim scholar, back in the, I think it's 12th or 13th century, at the height of the Enlightenment period, of what you call the Muslim Enlightenment period, before the Almohadin or the Almohadin and the Morabitun came along. These were the enlightened scholars. They preached tolerance and the unification of the three monotheistic faiths. Well, we'll come back to see him a little bit later on the way out and tell you more about that. Welcome again. We're back to the city streets of Old Cordoba. We're going to head towards the Jewish quarter, so Spanish known as La Juderia. As you can see, it's a busy day today. So all the restaurants and all the popular places that people love. And if you notice, the Spaniards in this part of Spain love their flowers. You can see the pot of fresh flowers growing over the houses. Isn't that amazing? And this is someone's house. For the pleasure of family and the pleasure of all the people passing by. So we're making our way to the Jewish quarter, and we'll see you then. We're now heading towards the synagogue, which is just up here. Jewish quarter. So, here is the Rambam.
There you go.
So this is the synagogue, and we're quickly going to make the tour here. Very, very busy. So you can't miss right here the symbol of the cross right there. You can see the desecration of this place. Ladies' quarter up the top. And where this sacred Echal would have been. Heartbreaking to see. Very disappointing. Anyway, hopefully some better tidings. Coming out of the shul again, we're back to the Rambam. So, and it's on. You can see it sits on Plaza de Tiberiades, Tiberiad's place. So, Rabbi Moshe, see you on the next one. We're here at the Museum of Sepharad in the heart of Cordoba, and it's bittersweet. Actually, I would say it's bitter. Although you can look here, the light will allow it. I don't know if the light will allow. It's a beautiful home, and you think, who did they appropriate this from? It's just down the street from the synagogue, and heartbreaking as it is, the Spaniards have tried to show and celebrate the history of their Jews. But something very interesting you can notice is if I come into this part of the museum and we look at all the memorabilia, and we see the Ten Commandments, and we see the menorahs, and then we can look again and we see another huge menorah, all to give us the impression that they've preserved a semblance of Spanish Jewry. But let's look a little bit closer. If you can see, it says origin Morocco, and again origin Morocco. None of the artifacts here are actually Spanish, and I wonder why that is. When you think that they meticulously took their time in destroying any remnants of Jewish identity here in Spain, to the point that you cannot even find a Jewish cemetery anymore. How scary is that? Proof of and testimony of their lack of preservation. So they're showing us all these wonderful Jewish artifacts that are, well, not really Jewish, but should we say Moroccan in origin. Hey, let me show you. Can you see? Maracos, Syria. Tetuan, Rabat, Fez, Tetuan, Larache, Fez, Tetuan. Shocking. So, this concludes the Cordoba chapter of our trip, and it kind of puts closure for me on a part of Spain that I loved and no longer do. I think the relationship between me and Spain is coming to its end. I'm falling out of love with the place. So, beautiful terraces, patios with wonderful flowers. As we head back to the car, next step, or next part of the trip, Seville for the girls.
Sevilla!
Sevilla. The Macarena and the Alta da Fe. That's where it all started.